Hello everybody, in this video we're going to be taking a look at a more beginner sort of approach to airbrushing. So we're going to be covering what it is, how to thin your paint, and how to use it to paint your miniatures. So what is an airbrush and how do we use it? An airbrush, quite simply, is just another tool that you can use to paint your miniatures, and you put paint in the cup up here at the top, and you use something like an air hose and a compressor to pull air into the airbrush, and it then shoots out through the front and atomizes your paint to get really nice smooth coats. Now most airbrushes, and especially the ones that I'd recommend anyway, are what are known as a dual action airbrush. So what that means is that you can push down for air and then you pull the trigger back for paint. So if you were to pull it back all the way, you are fully opening up the airbrush, the needle is all the way back, and you're going to just get loads of paint coming out. But simply, to actually use it, you just push down, pull back, and then you'll be having paint coming through. Now, the real key thing to practice when it comes to airbrushing is what is known as trigger control. So this means actually adjusting how much air you use and how far back you pull to get optimal coverage, and you're not going to just completely lather the area with paint and causing it to obscure details and things like that. So when it comes to actually using our paint in our airbrush, we're going to have to dilute it. So if we were to put something like Mephiston Red straight into our airbrush and then try to airbrush with it, Mephiston Red is way too thick, and all that will really happen is it's just going to clog up inside your airbrush and just cause you all sorts of nightmares. So as mentioned, we need to dilute it, and for that we're going to be using some Airbrush Flow Improver. Now, Flow Improver is quite simply just a medium that will thin the paint, but it also helps to actually prolong the drying time of the paint. And what that simply will do is, on your needle just here, you could very easily, if you're airbrushing for a while, you get paint that dries and builds up on your needle, and that can then just go into your nozzle and again give you a clog. The Airbrush Flow Improver helps to somewhat prevent that by causing the paint to dry slower on your needle and therefore not give you as many clogs. So to get our paint ready, we're just going to take our Flow Improver. I always like to do this actually in the cup of the airbrush, but you don't have to. You can do it in something that's like a little dish or something like that off to the side and then pour the mixture in, but this is just the way that I've always done it. So we're going to put in a few drops of Flow Improver. I did about 5 drops there, and then we're going to do 1 brush full of Mephiston Red. We're going to put that in and then just mix it around in the belly of our cup. Now, this is just a quick example. You know, some other paints might be thicker than Mephiston Red and therefore require more Flow Improver. Some are thinner, so they'll require less. But it is honestly just a matter of just practicing it and getting used to it. There's not really any magical ratio here. But with airbrushing, if you end up over thinning your paint, it's not as big of a deal as if you're using a paintbrush, because the airbrush allows you to do multiple very thin coats very quickly, and you're still going to get a nice smooth finish at the end of the day. So now that our paint is all set up and ready, as mentioned earlier on, this is a dual action airbrush, so if we push just down, we only get air and we get no paint at all. If we were to pull back when using our air, that's when we get our paint, so it will look like this. Okay, so we've gone over the theory of how to use an airbrush, so now let's actually apply it to a miniature. Now, with airbrushing, obviously there's myriads of different things that the airbrush can do on your miniatures, from things like OSL to honestly just using it to prime your miniatures, anything like that. But one of the easiest things that I like to use it for is what is known as a volumetric. And all this simply means is that, as you can see with this Stormcast right now, he's just primed, but you see how we've got the lighter tones from my lamp hitting, and then we've got shadow tones underneath. If we were to try and actually replicate that with, say, 2 or 3 different highlights and shadows with a paintbrush, it would take a fair while. With an airbrush, we can do it very, very quickly. So I'm going to do this red just for simply for a tutorial purpose. And what you're going to need is just a shadow tone, a mid-tone, and a highlight tone. So I'm going to use Barknar Burgundy, Mephiston Red, and Evil Sun Scarlet. So our first step with our airbrush is to take our shadow tone, and we're going to actually apply this over the entirety of our model, or at least the areas that we want our volumetric. We don't necessarily need it on things like the shield. I'm just going to be focusing on the armor. So with our paint all set up and ready, what we're going to do is go down for air, and we're going to pull back to about 30 to 40%. We don't need to go all the way back, or else we're going to use way too much paint and just completely clog the miniature. So here we are with the model all base coated in. So our next step is to take our midtone, and what we're going to do is use our airbrush, and we're going to actually angle our miniature and our airbrush so that we're spraying in a top down motion from 45 degrees and 90. And then what this is going to do is, because of the way that an airbrush works, it sprays in a cone. Where our airbrush is going to come down, let's say this chest plate here, it will hit the top of the chest plate here, and it won't hit underneath. So we're going to get our Mephiston Red on top of that chest plate, as you can see where our light is actually hitting right now, and not underneath, maintaining a shadow for us. And here we are after the Mephiston Red stage, and you can see what I mean now. From top down, where our light will be hitting, we have that nice bright Mephiston Red, and then underneath, we still maintain that Barknar Burgundy from earlier. So if we look at the miniature from that golden angle, then you see we maintain all of those nice shadows, and it is a very, very natural looking highlight and shadow scheme. Now, if we were to do this with a paintbrush, you'd be looking at doing a lot of glazing with your Barknar Burgundy to get all of these shadows, and you can see the speed difference is honestly night and day. For the final step, we're going to take our Evil Sun Scarlet, and it's going to be a bit more precise now using the precision of the airbrush, and we're going to be only doing this from the top down, so from 90 degrees, and we're going to be looking at things such as the shoulder pads and the top of the head and the top of the chest where the light would catch the most. So after all of the airbrushing, this is the result that we get. So you can see what I mean quite clearly now. We've got those nice bright reds from up top where our light is hitting, and we still maintain the shadows underneath in their natural position. And you saw really the speed that we can actually do this. Again, if we were to do this with a paintbrush, it would take a long time, a lot of glazing to get to something as smooth as this. Whereas the airbrush, I did this whole mini in probably about 5 minutes, and that is honestly really the power of airbrushing. Say we have a squad of these all lined up, or if you're like a Blood Angel player or something like that, and you've got assault intercessors, you line 10 of them up and just do this on each one. So you do all of the base coats, all of the midtones, and all of the highlights, and you pretty much have a squad that's 80-90% done at that point, and it will take you probably about half an hour. So really that highlights the actual main power of the airbrush, which is speed and efficiency, especially if you're doing something like an army project. And finally, once you're done painting, obviously we now need to clean our airbrush. So as you can see, we still got a bit of paint left in our cup. So we're just simply going to blow that out into one of these. This is just like an airbrush cleaning pod, and we can just slowly blow out the excess into this. And then once that is done, all you're going to need is some water. I like to use one of these squirty bottles that has this bent nozzle, because you can get that down into the belly of the cup. We're just going to put a bit of water in there, and then you're going to need something to block the end of the airbrush so the air can't escape this way. It has to come back up through the cup and it will dislodge any stuck paint that's down in here. Now, what I use is just an old towel rag, but again, you can just use anything. We're going to block the end, push down for air, pull back for paint, and you'll get a backflow bubble. And then just simply dump this out into your paint pot and blow out the excess. And then it's simply just a case of rinse and repeat until you can't see any paint down at the bottom of your cup. So overall then, even as just a quick beginner kind of airbrush, using it for something like very quick volumetrics or even just priming your miniatures, you can see that the airbrush is a fantastic tool to have in your arsenal. It really helps to speed up the process of painting in general, especially if you're doing an army project. Again, you know, if we were doing a Blood Angel army project and we had something like this red volumetric just here, we could get through all of our infantry, etc. very quickly compared to paintbrushing it. So you don't have to use an airbrush to do the smoothest, most amazing blends and, you know, excellent OSL. Even if you just use it to prime your miniatures, you will save yourself a lot of time. But something like this is a fairly quick, fairly easy 3-step process to get a very nice result. So my advice to you is just honestly to go out and just get yourself some like easy to do miniatures that you don't really care about if you're going to ruin them. You know, something like this Stormcast. I got this as just one of those Warhammer Storm minis for free, and just practice on them until you're comfortable with it, and then after that you can then progress to more advanced techniques. But thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for any ongoing support. I truly appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.